All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a really great conversation with Dr. Hall again today. We've been talking in the past a lot about tools and skills to help you be successful in your business, a lot of which I have up on the screen here, and you can go back to past episodes to look those up. But what we want to introduce today are some resources to help you acquire these tools and skills. It takes a real concerted effort to incorporate these into your life, into your business, and whatnot. So we want to talk about what resources that you can look for, and ultimately how we could help you acquire all those. So with that, we'll introduce you to Dr. Hall. He's a business psychologist, executive coach, does public speaking, and has written multiple books. And we love to call him the neuro nerd, and like to hear specifics on how it is that our brains think and why we think the way we think. So that's where that name term came from. But thanks for joining us today, Dr. Hall. How are you?
I'm really glad to be here, Jared. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, anytime. We'd love to have you on and see what we can take out of these conversations. But before we do that, I'll do some quick housekeeping. For those of you that I haven't met, my name is Jared Lee. I'm the associate broker at Team Lead at My Home Connection, also called referred to as MHC Realty. The sponsor for today is the Perfect Real Estate Business. We've been developing this over the last couple decades or more in the case with Dr. Hall. To incorporate business coaching, life coaching, mentoring, which are some of the specifics that we're talking about today. But we've also got other things that we've incorporated into it, such as lead generation, private and white label options for you, and then some passive and semi-passive income options. So feel free to reach out to us anytime if you want to talk a little bit more about reinventing the process of reinventing real estate. But bringing you back on, Dr. Hall, I find it interesting the differences in the terminology of these resources we've talked about, and how everybody's perception of what a consultant is, what a coach is, what a mentor is, and kind of how that all unfolds. Is that a super kind of frustrating thing to see in your business?
I I, I try to adopt a little bit more of a philosophical tone. Otherwise, I get frustrated all the time. That I think there are generally people trying to do good, and if a term becomes popular for whatever reason, everybody jumps on it. And I think maybe in this episode, I can maybe make some of those distinctions, give you a little history of the terms, and help people understand how each of these different terms could be interpreted differently, just to gain clarity for what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think that's very significant and important as you're wanting to grow in your personal life, in your business, to know, oh, if I'm going to go find a coach, okay, what is that? What does a coach mean? And by the way, is what they're pitching to me coaching, right?
Yeah, and do I really want coaching as it's currently being defined? Yeah,
Right. Or mentoring. Maybe I'm looking for mentoring and I don't know it, but I hear somebody say some cool things that are selling coaching services. And if I can't differentiate the difference, it could be frustrating to spend,
right.
one, money, and two, time, and realize, oh, I was looking for mentoring. Or as we'll come to know, consulting, or maybe it's just some very specific training. So I think, I hope that today's conversation helps uncover that, in more detail. But what I'd like to do first is just kind of revisit just briefly some of the topics we've talked about, and better illuminate or describe the importance of knowing what you don't know, right? We've talked about all these tools and skills that people should have, but at least in my experience, it's often that people don't know that they don't have them, or that they need them, or even maybe in some cases what they are.
Uh, by definition, a blind spot is something you don't know that you don't know. I mean, Everybody has seen this but me. Okay, I need assistance to know that that exists, but everybody else knows it, and that's everybody's blind spot. Is you need somebody else to point it out to you, and the first time somebody points it out to you, it's embarrassing,
Yeah.
and then you're irritated that nobody told you sooner, and then once you make peace with it, then you can improve on it if that's possible.
Yeah.
But at least you know it's there. And so you need help from somebody to point out those blind spots.
You know, this it's kind of funny. My brother and I are totally different in most things, but there are some things that we are very much alike. And over the years, spending more time with him, I'm like, oh, I do that too. You know, whatever it is. But it's so interesting that I had no idea, or maybe I had a little idea, but I didn't know to the extent that I did it. But when I see my brother do it, I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Well, when you grow up in the same house as children and then as young adults and sometimes into even older adulthood, we tend to think the way we did it in my home is the way everybody does it everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that you're grown, and you don't live with your brother anymore, you see him do things. You go, oh, we got that from home. Nobody else does that. Oh, we're the odd ones. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, not want to spending a whole bunch of time on it, but these are very important items, and I don't want to take them lightly. I highly encourage you to look at past episodes because each topic brings a lot of value to the table. Even if you know something about it a little bit or even a lot, I can almost guarantee you there'll be great information that you can glean out of that, such as why you need a personalized plan rather than just a coach in a box, or what are what's the importance of good habits and why it's harder to make good habits than bad habits, and what they ultimately translate to. Anyway, again, I don't want to spend a bunch of time on it, but we need to know what skills we need, what tools we need, and why we need them.
Yeah.
So with
And
that,
you need an outsider to help you with those.
and yes, you have a blind spot almost guaranteed in a lot of those areas.
Yep.
So, okay, so we have these blind spots. We don't know, but we're going to find out, if you work with us at the Perfect Real Estate Business, then, we're obviously sensitive to these and focused on these. And then what are these resources that we bring to bear, or at least that you should go look for? Can you give us kind of just a synopsis or a quick, brief definition of the differences, and then we'll dig into them a little deeper?
Yeah. So these different terms: mentorship, coaching, consultation, training, accountability. For most people, they're just kind of all blended together. They all kind of mean the same thing. In my world and in your world, Jared, they mean very different things. And so I'll give a brief difference at the beginning, and then I want to dive in deeper to each of them. Mentorship is usually a more informal relationship with someone who from your real life, who's typically more experienced than you. It's typically an informal relationship. It tends to be pretty long lasting. This is somebody who's kind of normally in your life, kind of takes you under their wing and kind of shows you the ropes. Usually it's somebody who has some knowledge in your profession and can help introduce you to other people as well. And they're interested in your career and professional development for a long term. And most of the great leaders I know, the people who've been super successful, have had a mentor. To be without a mentor really is a lot harder way to go. There are people who've been successful without a long-standing mentor. But if you can find somebody who loves you enough to invest in your life in that way, that's a great benefit.
One thing I find interesting about mentorship, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it almost seems like there needs to be a more concerted effort or energy from the mentoree than the mentor. That they need to lean in, they need to identify that mentor and really appreciate that and lean into it. Is that fair?
Um, I, I don't know. I guess I would say that sometimes it's formally announced, but sometimes it just informally grows. That if you have a mentor, they decide that they like you enough that they want to take you under your wing, and sometimes the person who's being mentored seeks it out, and other times the mentor kind of watches from a distance and guides until it becomes apparent to the person who's being mentored that, oh, this person's watching out for me. Little backstory: the term mentor is actually the name of a character in the Odyssey, the Homer's book, The Odyssey.
Oh, okay.
And if you're a history nerd or a literature nerd, here's how it goes. Odysseus, the father, who's the main character of the Odyssey, is off on his Odyssey. He's away from his family for 10 years. His wife, Penelope, is at home, and everybody wants Odysseus's land and property, and they all want to marry her. So she keeps trying to ward off all these people who want to marry her. And they have a son together named Telemachus. And a guy in the house, one of their servants, is named Mentor. And the goddess Athena possesses Mentor, and then she becomes Mentor. And so the goddess Athena, in the body of Mentor, takes care of Odysseus' son for those 10 years because she's got him on this quest, and Mentor is who's taking care of his son while he's gone.
Mm.
And so it's a great illustration that this is a older caretaker person who out of love is looking out for another person. They're Telemachus.
Gotcha. No, that's beautiful. I love it. And maybe that's where I've got the idea from of mentorship, because, and I guess I just have to be honest. There's been occasions where I've wanted to mentor because I felt a pull towards helping somebody.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like they were either aware of what a mentor was or that appreciated that I would be a good mentor. I don't know what it was. So that's where my earlier comment came from.
Yeah. And there are people who don't think they need help and don't want to be trained.
You can't have a mentor without a mentee, right?
Well,
I mean,
or a Telemachus.
Or Telemachus.
They really need, the person has to want to be taught. And in all of these, when I bring somebody into my practice, one of the first things I'm looking for is, are they teachable? Are they trainable? Are they open to correction? And if they're not, I don't work with them. I get the comment from a lot of people. It's like, oh, do you work with probably work with a lot of jerks? No. I hardly ever work with jerks. They go, why? Because there's so many bosses who are jerks. So many company owners are just awful people. I go, yeah, they never hire me. And so it really takes a special kind of person to seek out improvement.
Yeah. That one we're going to probably have to have a long-winded conversation on because a lot of things come to mind. And I'm not even quite sure where to go from that. But I think the importance is to ask yourself, if you're viewing this, are you in that state? Are you ready for a mentor? And what I mean by that is not just do I want to hear what somebody says, but am I going to embrace what they recommend or the advice that they give? Truly.
Yeah. So back when I was doing psychotherapy, and this was decades ago, I'd have people come in and they'd spend their money and spend 50 minutes with me, and I would try to build into their lives, and then they never changed. And what they wanted was they just wanted somebody to gripe to, but they didn't want to change.
And change is difficult.
Biggest change is difficult. And, at some point with all of them, I fired them. I said, okay, I'm probably not your guy because I keep telling you what, and we'll get to this role in a little bit. I keep showing you how to improve your life, and you keep deciding, no, that won't work, but you're going to come back and complain some more. Clearly, I'm not the right guy for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, I think that's a good segue. Let me see if I can find Coach here. So yeah, is Coach the next logical?
Yeah, coaching is the next logical. So the term, I studied an area of psychology called counseling psychology, which was the psychology of human performance, helping people who are doing well do better, the psychology of work, the psychology of career. And I was talking to one of my professors in the early 90s, and I said, what's this coaching thing? And he says, well, it's what counseling used to be. In the 50s, 60s, and 70s, what people are calling coaching today is what counseling was in the past. Now everybody calls counseling, they call it psychotherapy. Psychotherapy and counseling are the same thing. But really, coaching is helping people who are doing pretty well do better. What's happened is with the rise of these professional certification schools, these coaching certification programs, they have done a certain kind, and all of this is an outgrowth of the counseling psychotherapy models. It's all a type of what's called non-directive counseling or non-directive coaching. And so what you'll find with people who have graduated from those programs, they'll talk about coaching in a very particular way, which is we don't give answers, we help you discover those answers for yourself. And I think there's value in that. However, I used to get in trouble in graduate school because I'd be working with somebody and they would say, I keep having this problem and I don't know what it is. And I go, well, have you thought about X, whatever it was? And wow, never thought of that. And they go and apply it and things would get better. And the feedback I got from some of my supervisors was, don't you think it would have been more valuable if you had let her discover it for herself? And I said, yeah, but she wasn't discovering it for herself. I mean, I could have her pay to come in 10 more times, and 10 hours later, and I make money and she still doesn't know what the problem is. Why don't I just tell her and see if she'll apply it in 15 minutes, bing, bang, boom, she's on and we can work on other things and she can improve her life. And they're like, well, don't you think it would have been more powerful? And I said, probably, but she wasn't getting there. And so coaches will sometimes let people struggle. And so philosophically, if you want someone to help you struggle through, and there's some value in that, then someone who adopts that non-directive form of coaching will be a good choice for you, if that's the kind of thing you're looking for.
Well, I love the insight or the ability to say, yes, it would be more profound and more beneficial if they figured it out on their own. I can identify when they're not, because you've been doing it long enough. You can just tell, like, you're not, I could spend 10 sessions with you and it's not going to happen. Am I going to get paid for those 10 sessions? Yeah, probably. But also, is that person then, if I give them the answer, are they going to embrace the answer as maybe as good as if they had figured it out? Like, they really appreciate getting the answer. Now they can move on with their life.
And they can move on. I mean, sometimes, the light bulb comes on and the sky opens up and it fundamentally changes their life. If I call a plumber to my house, I don't want him to say, well, what do you think the problem is? Well, how would you? I don't know how to solve the problem. Fix it. And so I'm looking for his or her, the women plumbers are exceedingly rare. So we'll just use his. I want his expert advice. I want him who knows something more than me about how to solve my problem. And I delegate that to him.
Yeah. No, I love it. Okay, so now we're going to really muddy the waters here. Let's talk about consulting and how that fits into the mix.
So consulting is coaching. It's this deep relationship.
Which you've already alluded to, right?
Yeah. It's this deep relationship. It has some qualities of mentorship, But in addition to helping you discover yourself, a consultant will sometimes tell you the answer and sometimes guide you down a path. So they operate between that coaching and the next role, which we'll talk about, which is training, but it's that middle ground. And a consultant can be really, really beneficial if you have a skill deficit, if you have a knowledge deficit. And frankly, we all have skill and knowledge deficits. And so I think, Jared, I can be a consultant in my areas of expertise. My expert advice is in certain areas. Your expert advice is in other areas. And so depending on what a person needs, they need some of that deeper interaction. But occasionally there's a time for telling people, boy, that's a dumb idea. Why don't you try this?
Yeah.
Maybe with more sensitivity, but we all need to be caught up short and redirected from time to time.
Well, this one just came to my mind, so I'm hoping that it's a good, analogy or metaphor or whatever, and that I don't mix up the terms. So you help me through that. But I used to do software implementation, and I would implement software multiple times in multiple businesses. These businesses would quite often send and we're going to get to training, their resources, their people to these training classes to learn about the software. But being fresh into it, they couldn't just go back and install it and run with it. So I might teach them in a training, training environment, but then I would go in it as a consultant role to actually implement the software. So to your point, I would have to understand what it is they were trying to do so I could make the software do what they wanted it to do. So I didn't just hit the install button and click through the wizard. I had to set up the software to do it, but I had to give them the answer to how the software was going to do it. So I was called a software consultant. Is that a
right? Yeah, I think it's a great analogy. It's a hands-on approach to helping people solve their problems. But in my world, in the personal leadership development world, it really is a combination of a lot of different things. And I wear different hats on different days with different people. I was just in Nashville last week, and I was mostly in the training mode, and that's cool. I was able to help people that way. And in other organizations, I'm never in the training mode. I'm in the consultation/coaching mode.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love it. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the training, and we can bring all this together as we bounce through these. Sorry about that. Let's see here. And just so everybody knows, I kind of classify training as kind of outside of the CE, the continuing education space, right? CE's, I have to take these classes to keep my license type of thing. So let's look into training, real training. And I came across, I'm trying to remember the book that it came from, but it's a little irrelevant. Well, if I think of it, I'll give it to you. But he said 3% better than the average person in your key result areas. So whatever industry you're in, if you're 3% better than everybody else in those key areas, you're probably in the 5 to 10% of everybody.
Yeah, I think it's a great example. If you look at professional golf and the money winners, the people who win millions versus the people who just make the cut, the difference in the number of strokes is very small. It's I think in single digits from the big money winners to the others. And so they're really in that rarefied air, it's less than 3% better. It's a 0.5% better, and you're in the top 5 to 10%. So in most endeavors, it doesn't take that much improvement, though it isn't always easy, but it takes just little incremental improvement, and you can really accelerate your results.
Yeah, and I think that's the important takeaway. Well, there's a couple takeaways here. Is one, I think people underestimate what it takes to be in that top 5 or 10%. I think they look at people they consider in that category, that arena, and go, wow, how could I possibly get there, and sell themselves short and not strive for that because they're intimidated or lack confidence or whatever. Um, but they're, they need to strive for that. And by the way, in the world we live in today, there is an overabundance of training, almost to a fault, because you can find junk out there, and if you're not attentive or in tune to that, you can learn junk. But you can find, you could go get it. If your excuse, my point is, your excuse cannot be, I can't find training.
There's tons of training. You can always find training. Test it to see that it really is exceptional. And mixed in with the really awful training that's out there are some nuggets of people who are really phenomenal at what they do. And so it's a matter of searching and testing.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I might just add briefly here is to search for it, be very good at identifying whether to be good or not, because in some cases you're going to pay for it. A lot of the trend is, I'm going to give you a little taste, but I'm not really going to answer your question because I want you to buy it. So you really have to be discerning as to whether it's really good training or not. Right. References or, people that have, taken it before.
Or free examples of their work. There's, people who are in the training business, you can find other things that they've done. And if they're nothing but hot air in the other things they've done, they're probably nothing but hot air in their training. Yeah. So I just put in here, real quickly, obviously, training overcomes a lot, right? It builds your confidence, which then it gives you less fear of giving the wrong answer or, whatever it might be. So therefore your path to success is significantly abbreviated. And I think all these resources we've talked about, mentorship, coaching, and consulting, can all help do that. But training is something you can be very, very aggressive and do it on your own. You can do it on your own. I guess I would say the people I see who are really, really exceptional at their jobs, they are lifelong learners. They're constantly looking for training. And one of the lessons I've learned is that high quality training is hard to find and it is more expensive, but high quality, expensive training can change your work far more than inexpensive check the box for your continuing ed.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of that stuff. But if you're willing to seek out and pay a little bit more, you can have life transforming, career transforming training.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I remembered, I think it was Brian Tracy, Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life, or something along those lines, that talked about the 3% better. But he also made a comment that makes sense once you hear it, but that is, in today's world, we cannot be complacent. We used to think that we get into the workforce, we work really hard, we go up the ladder, we get to the position where we need to be, and like, okay, I'm here, and now I deserve to sit here. And I'm being a little brutal here, but right? We were at companies quite often for decades, and the odds of that happening today are slim to none. So what does that mean? It means you have to constantly be leveling up. The beauty is you can get your training, you can get your coaching, get your mentor wherever you need to be. Yeah. But if you're not, your competition is.
Your competition is, yes. There used to be an era in our world where you would join a company, you would marry a company, and they would marry you back. And they would be faithful to you and take you all the way into retirement and then take care of you. Now, what I find is that companies, many large companies, expect you to marry them, but they're just going to date you back. And when you become inconvenient, they're going to kick you to the curb. So that shift occurred, I think, in the 1980s, really, that large corporations were no longer faithful to their employees. And so since that time, it's been imperative for everybody in the workforce to chart your own course and realize that the big company isn't going to take care of you.
Yeah, and it might have even been in that same book where he said, you got to be ready to interview every day, because you could need to be interviewing tomorrow.
Yes.
And if you're sitting there all complacent, thinking that you don't have to be aggressive in what you're learning and new skills and all that, you're sorely mistaken. Hopefully nothing happens, but I hate to say it, but unfortunately these days it's becoming more and more likely that you could need to be out interviewing tomorrow.
Yeah. I've been self-employed since 1999, and the difference between me, a person who's been self-employed for 25 years now, and the person, yeah, it is 25, almost 25 years now, and the person who's been a W-2 employee for the last 25 years, is every day I know I'm responsible for taking care of my career. And somebody who's been employed for 25 years can easily be deceived into believing somebody else will take care of them, and they won't.
Yeah. Anyway, so very, very important. Drill it home one more time. Always be training.
Always be training. Yeah.
ABT?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Sure. ABT. Always be training.
Well, let's chat a little bit about the accountability piece. Everybody's favorite, right? And by the way, I'm sorry, real quick. If you don't like accountability as a self-employed, if you don't think that you have accountability at a job, you got somebody breathing down your neck every day to see what it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
So you might not like it, and you might, if you're doing your own thing, you might not want to pay somebody to do it, but it's super important.
It is super important. And it's interesting. Some people think that accountability is really somebody just cracking the whip on you and beating the drum to make you row the ship faster. In talking to people who are in the fraud examination business, people who investigate frauds, what they say is that these accountability steps actually provide you protection. That if you can, if you get that feedback loop and you show that you've done the right thing, then if something goes sideways, you've got an accountability record to show, okay, I did the right thing. So we tend to think of accountability as protecting or helping only the employer, the person who's doing it, when it actually also protects the person who's being held accountable, because it helps. For example, if money goes missing and you've got an accountability loop, you can say, well, here was the accountability method we used. There's no way I could do it. There's no way I could have stolen that money. And so accountability really helps everybody.
I'm really hesitant to bring this up, and this might bite me. Hopefully it doesn't. But the big hot topic is Secret Service. And
we're recording this shortly after the attempted assassination on Donald Trump.
So the question is, it's clearly a failure, right?
Absolutely a failure.
Even if the assassin didn't assassinate Donald Trump, he was successful in getting a shot off.
He was successful in getting a shot off. He killed a man, and he injured two others. So there three injured, one dead.
Yeah. So my point is, he was successful in his attempt.
Yes, he was.
He wasn't successful in what he wanted to do, but his attempt was successful. But anyway, my point here is, there's a drastic difference between personal accountability and today versus what I see as accountability in the past. And this director can do whatever she wants, but it seems strange to me that, one, do we hold ourselves accountable these days? Yes or no? And two, do we have to have people that hold us accountable, of both of which I think are hyper important? Because without that accountability, in her case, well, let me go back. When Reagan was shot, the director resigned. Said, I'm the top, I'm responsible, I resign. He took accountability for himself. This new director, her approach is different. Hey, I want to find out what fell apart. I want to, dig into it, but I'm going to stay. what her supervisors will do, whether they'll keep her or not, I don't know. That right. So there's personal accountability, and then there's anyway. I'm getting in this long drawn out thing, but my point here is without accountability, nothing changes. And if in 6 months from now, 12 months from now, somebody gets shot, and you wonder, did the lack of accountability result in a murder? Anyway, sorry.
And we don't know. I mean, we don't have a crystal ball to look into the future. Let me use a slightly different example, but I think it's true when you're talking about your own personal accountability at work or in a governmental agency. You've probably all heard of the example of getting on an airplane and flying from New York to Los Angeles. And if you've got the course, the coordinates put in 1 degree off, you won't end up in Los Angeles. You'll end up in Mexico. You'll end up in San Francisco, but you won't end up where you want. What accountability is constant course corrections to make sure you're going to end up in the right area. And if I'm flying from New York to Los Angeles and I only do one course correction and I'm somewhere over Colorado and I need to take a hard left, to go south to Los Angeles, I should have made a course correction earlier. But if I make course corrections every 15 minutes, then I'm never that far off where I want to go. And that's what accountability is. It's a feedback loop that happens quickly, frequently, to make sure you're not too far off course. In the case of what's happened with this attempted assassination, what feedback loops didn't happen all along the way? What checks didn't happen? What balances didn't happen all along the way to make sure an error didn't occur? And we all need those course corrections to help us to do our job well.
Well, and I think there's another point here. Not just do we need course corrections, but how aggressive do they need to be?
We all need course corrections, but if we're doing small course corrections every 15 minutes, every 15 days, they're not dramatic. It seems like we've been on track the whole time. It's only when we stop having those feedback loops and those course corrections that we get way off track. And a disciplined organization has regular accountability, and they know it's part of becoming an efficient and effective organization because they're not wildly off track. They know when they're getting off track just a little bit, and they get back on track right away.
Yeah, well, I love the way that you stated that or walked us through that, because if you are in an accountability mode, you have accountability for your behavior and you're getting held accountable from somebody else, and there's these little micro adjustments. That's far less painful than going, you know what, man, I can't get to LA to save my life because now I'm in Peru. I mean, I'm just making up.
Yeah, I'm done. I mean, it doesn't work as well. This example doesn't work as well for me, but if you let your hair grow out long, then the first cut you get is pretty dramatic. But if you keep getting trims every week, it doesn't look any different. And so we all need those regular tune-ups.
Yeah, I love it. Is there a way, and I should have asked you this up front just to kind of wrap this up. I'm hoping that there is, because I'm asking. Is there a way to take all of these together, or is it just as simple as saying you should be doing them all, and if you're doing them all, you're in good hands? Or
I think you should be looking for one or more people to fit in these roles for you. I think finding a mentor, someone who's an informal person who will help guide you and look out for your career long term, that I think may be just a little different than the others. The coach, the consultant, the trainer, the accountability partner. sometimes the mentor can also be the accountability partner, but we need one or more of those people in those roles. And we don't need the same person our entire life. Sometimes you have a mentor and they've taken you as far as they can take you, and you need to find another mentor. Or you have a coach or a consultant who takes you as far as they can take you, and then you find somebody else.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. And by the way, what I would add, and we've talked about this in prior episodes, is, you know, we approach things as we're an integrated being and a holistic approach, that it should be every aspect of your life that is healthy, right? Your physical, your
Yes.
mental, your, financial. And you should have these mentors, coaches in all of those aspects of your life to make sure that you are moving in a positive direction. Because in my experience, and you correct me if I'm wrong, if I don't have somebody that's smarter, better, more experienced than I am, I'm probably going to go backwards. If I'm not moving forwards, I'm going backwards in my life, my physical health, or maybe I'm neutral. I don't know.
Sometimes you can just plateau, but
Okay. Oh, there you go.
tough. It's tough to move forward unless you have somebody who's helping you.
Okay, there you go.
Every great, we'll use athletics. Every great athlete has a strength and conditioning coach. This is a person you've never heard of, but they help that athlete become stronger and more flexible so that they can do their job better. And what I do, I'm a mental strength and conditioning person. I'm a consultant who helps them with their mental strengths and their mental conditioning. And everybody needs somebody like that at some phase in their career.
Yeah.
If they want to be exceptional. Otherwise, they move backward. I mean, we knew Michael Jordan was ready to retire when people saw the moving guys pull his weight equipment out of his house, because they knew he wasn't going to be training anymore. Yeah. So he wasn't going to be staying at the top level, you know, and now he's playing cards and golf. Yeah. Good for him.
Yeah. If he had it in there, he's probably still working out. He's probably still fit
working out
once that equipment comes out. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you need to make sure that equipment is in your house, metaphorically, and that you've got the strength and conditioning coach in there helping you to become better at your job.
Yeah.
And your life in general.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's a great way to wrap things up. But other than getting a hold of us at Perfect Real Estate Business, what's the best way for folks to find you?
They can find me at my website, drrogerhall.com.
And learn about you.
Pardon me?
And learn about you, sorry.
And learn about me. drrogerhall.com. You can go to YouTube and type in Dr. Roger Hall, and you'll find my channel. And there's a bunch of videos I've put up there. On my website, you can see the book that's coming out and the 3 books I've already written. You can also find an online course that I've created called Freak Out. The subtitle of that is Fear Less, Live More. And it's helping people overcome anxiety so they can live more meaningful, purposeful lives.
Love it. Love it. All right, let's bring us both back in here and just kind of wrap things up. Man, I'm just so encouraged after our conversations, and I hope that the folks listening are encouraged to go look at some of the skills that we've talked about, tools that you need, and encourage that we have some resources, whether it's our resources or not. We encourage you to go find them. As Dr. Hall so eloquently put it, go find that mentor, go find that coach, go find that training. Because you will build confidence, you will move forward, you will progress in whatever endeavor that you have in your life, and ultimately that's just the best place to be, because you are a leader. As Dr. Hall will share, everybody's a leader. To think that you're not is selling yourself short.
Somebody's looking to you as an example. Try to be a good example.
Excellent. As always, Dr. Hall, we appreciate you. And thanks, everybody, for joining in.
Thank you. Good night.
Have a blessed day.